Well, hello, church, and welcome to the Rewind. Things look a little different than they did in 2011. We have moved off of just the email form of our Rewind, and we will be coming at you live via video every single week in 2012 as we just kind of rewrap and recount and rewind, and in some cases fast forward through our conversation from Sunday. So we're excited about that. It's one of the evolutions of communication that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks as we just seek to be more effective in everything that we do. Before we hit the sound effect music, hit the tape rewind, and talk about Sunday, let me first remind you of this. If you haven't already, make the Creek part of your midweek activities. Just schedule it in. It is a great time of faith, fellowship, food, fun. It's good conversation. Everything kicks off 5:30 p.m. in the Connection Cafe for a great dinner. This week we're having barbecue sandwiches, Southwestern beans, Western salad chips, desserts, drinks, the whole 9 yards. Following that at 7 o'clock, I'll be teaching in the cafe. Stephen Adair will be with the youth group in his room, and then we'll have Creek Kids classes and activities for children of all ages. Let it be a time of refreshment and renewal. Make it a part of your week, and we will see you on Wednesday. All right, hit the sound effect. Let's rewind the week. All right, this past weekend we kicked off our new worship series entitled Big. Interesting word, big. It's all around us. We got Big Macs, we got the Big Apple. There are people who shop at Big Lots. We got Big Texas hair. But we are talking about none of that. What we're talking about is a big life that God has called us to, filled with big promises, big faith, big courage, big moments, resulting in some very big breakthroughs. And I hope you were excited and as uplifted as I was on Sunday as we began this great start to 2012 in the story of Joshua. It's a big story about a big leader as God was making some big promises and taking them to a very big promised land. And that was one of the things that we really discussed. There's a place of promise that God is calling us to. And I don't know what area of life that might be in. Maybe it's relationships or in work or finances or with our children. Maybe it's with our faith. But there is a place of promise that God is leading us to, a promised land that's a better place of contentment where there's more joy and more peace and more power and more prosperity than maybe what we're experiencing in that area or that situation currently. So as we began that story, we began at the very beginning, chapter 1, verse 1, where God looks out and he says to Joshua, Moses is dead, it's time for you to be my leader. We highlighted that as one of our merges for Sunday. We had 3 of them. The first was this. That's right. Quit rereading the past pages of your life. The story only moves forward. There was a choice. The Israelites, Joshua, the nation as a whole, they could have just lived and been frozen in the past with Moses now gone, but that wasn't the path nor the place that God had called them to. The story had to continue to move on. Now, you and I, we struggle through the same thing sometimes. We live in the past. We reflect on the past, and it has a way of making us live in pause or even become a prisoner to what the past was, whether that was good or whether that was bad. Whether we look at the past and we say, well, those mistakes or those downfalls, they identify me. They are who I am. Or we look at the past and we say, it will never be as good as it once was. God wants us to know our story is not there. The story only moves forward. And so you and I, just like Joshua and the Israelites, in order to get to that place of promise, have to continue to move forward in our story. We have to continue to cross that river into the land that God is calling us to. Now, when we interact with the dynamic gospel and we read through that story, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is it that's holding me back? What is it that's making me live on pause? Why is it that I'm allowing myself to live in the past pages that have already been turned rather than the ones that are leading me to the adventure that God has in store for me? Quit rereading the past. Say that 5 times fast. Quit rereading the pages of the past Start moving forward, because the story only moves forward. That was merge number 1. Our second merge was this. That's right. Believe in promise and start walking big. God says to Joshua, everywhere you put your foot, I'm going to give you that land. And God is making that same bold promise to you and I everywhere we go. And we have an assurance of that in Jesus. We have even more assurance in the faith that we're living than even Joshua had in that moment. But the promise that God makes to Joshua is everywhere you go, everywhere you set your foot, I will give you that area. It's a bold promise, and we need to start believing in that promise. It's interesting, if you interacted with us in the live event at YouVersion on Sunday, then you saw the question that reflected that. That was really a question of, well, is it easy to believe in those bold promises of God? And the results were interesting, and I think we ought to at some time dissect that, but there it was indicated in all of the answers that there's a struggle to believe in those promises. Listen, God is faithful. God is loving. God is powerful. He makes bold promises, and He has delivered on every single one of them. And as He says to Joshua, He says to you and I, believe in that. And know that everywhere we go, every place we step our foot down, we are stepping with power. We are stepping with the power of the resurrection, the hope of an empty tomb. We are stepping with grace and with mercy and with love. We are stepping in and to and with the presence and the power and the promise of God. Believe in that and let that build inside of you as we move through each and every day. All right, here's the third merge. And this one's a little tough sometimes. Acknowledge God's promise so that we don't miss out on the blessing. It's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to sing about it. It's another thing to acknowledge it. Acknowledge the promise, the presence, and the power of God so that we don't miss out on the blessing. Every moment, every breath, from the moment that we wake up to the moment that we go to bed, and even through the night, God is with us. He's watching over us. He's guiding us. His hope, His power, His grace, His love, His faithfulness. That promise that we're talking about, it's there. It's with us always. He says to Joshua, I am with you always. Hebrews echoes that. Says, I am going to be with you always. When Jesus is ascending and leaving, He says to His disciples, trust in this, I am with you always. Always. God is with us always. Acknowledge His presence. From the moment that we open and begin our day, acknowledge the presence of God and let that power transform the moment. When you find yourself in a difficult spot, maybe at work, or maybe it's at the house, maybe it's with the kids, or maybe it's with school, and you find yourself, acknowledge the presence and the power that is there with you in the moment, that is available to you in the moment, so that you can experience the blessing that God is giving you. Joshua is our blueprint to getting big. We're going to talk about, as we did on Sunday, a big life, and next week we're going to talk about some big courage and some big faith and some big problems and some big moments and some big breakthroughs that God is ultimately leading us to. This is the year of big. And our blueprint is Joshua. Our promise is God. Go big this week. Step with power. Believe in the promise. And start walking big.